Hi, I'm Charlie Collins, and this is the Donegal Sport Hub Donegal Daily Championship Podcast, brought to you in association with Kelly Centra, multi-award-winning store, Mountaintop Letterkenny, providing 24-hour service, 7 days a week.
And you're very welcome to this, our podcast, to look forward to the 2020 Michael Murphy Sports and Leisure Championship final here in Donegal. The senior final, of course, between Naomh Conaill and Kilcar. Should have been played last year, but you all know the reason it wasn't. So we're delighted that Kelly Centra have sponsored us with our podcast this year again to finish off 2020 and, of course, a little bit down the road to look forward to 2021. I'm joined in studio by three special guests who are very knowledgeable in their GAA. We're going to find out how much in the next hour or so. Alan Foley, my former colleague here in Sports Hub, has moved on to greater things now. He's now sports editor with the Donegal Democrat. Didn't he do well to get rid of us, or did we get rid of him, I wonder? I'm not too sure, Alan, which it was.
We'll tell you in an hour's time.
Frank Craig is sports reporter with the Donegal News. Delighted to have Frank on board again. And our Dra man, close to Glenties and Naomh Conaill, so he should know one or two things that have been going on over there. And I'm delighted to say we're also joined by two-time All-Star, All-Ireland winner and 3 times winner of the Dr. Maguire Cup, Neil Gallagher from Glenswilly. Neil, you're very welcome. You're an illustrious company here today, Neil. I know you're a bit nervous, but no need to be. You'll be fine. I know people out there watching will be saying, once I introduce Neil, well, at least there's one person on there who knows something about football, and they could be right. Right, we're going to look forward to this final, long-awaited final between Naomh Conaill and Kilcar. Most people would say it would have been a cracker last year because both teams were taking great form into it. If you look at the semi-finals, that controversial goal by Liam McAloon got Naomh Conaill through against St Eunan's by just 1 point in extra time. Kilcar were much more comfortable winners than the O'Donnell Park on a terrible day weather-wise, but a great performance by them as they beat Gweedore and ended their hopes of retaining the championship. Right, let's go to Alan first. Alan, it's unusual circumstances. Usually a championship finals coming at the end of a hard-fought campaign with group matches, quarter-finals, semi-finals. We have none of that to go on. All we can go on is league form at the moment. Some people would say that's a waste of time because both teams have been without so many players due to county and all that sort of thing. What we do know is Naomh Conaill have looked pretty unbeatable in league games so far. Kilcar have been impressive, although they've lost 2 out of 6. Where do we go? Where do we try and find what will happen this weekend in terms of what we know about them?
Yeah, it's a very unusual situation, Charlie. I suppose, as you said, Naomh Conaill, I think, have won now 15 games on the bounce since Kilcoo, if you count the 2 regional league games last year. But as you said, like what's happening over there, I think, is basically Martin Regan shuffles his pack. Every player that was available basically got near enough the same sort of minutes. From the outside looking in, you're not really sure who's... A guy could be injured, you're not sure because the squad is that big. Whereas Kilcar, then they've kind of dug into their panel the last few years when the county players weren't available, and they've become stronger for it. But it's a very unusual situation when you come in. I don't think the league form really counts for absolutely anything here. And I think that could mean both teams are a little bit tetchy getting into this because of the fact they don't really have a good run of having their full team on the park, even for a league game or 2. So it's kind of it's a very, very unusual situation, as you said.
Yeah. News of an injury in the Naomh Conaill camp. They have a huge squad, but the player we're talking about, Owen McGettigan, will be a huge loss to them if, as we expect, he won't be available for the weekend, Frank.
Yeah, huge loss. Apparently Owen, I think, suffered a serious knee injury. Now, the actual diagnosis of it, or if he's had it scanned, I'm not too sure. But by all accounts, I think it's an ACL or a cruciate. Listen, a huge miss. In terms of the county final, I think, Glenties are probably, or Naomh Conaill are good enough, I think, to beat Kilcar without Owen. But I think this generation of players, or this team maybe at the minute, they probably should be looking at the bigger picture, and an Ulster title wouldn't be beyond them. And I think that's where they might maybe miss a player like Owen, maybe, in an Ulster Club Championship run, because he offers them that something, that little bit different. He's kind of enigmatic, he's unpredictable. But even against Kilcar, I mean, without Owen there, like, you look what Glenties might, decide to do. You think like a big Kieran Gawler, Nathan Byrne, Charlie McGuinness. I mean, if Nathan Byrne comes in instead of Owen McGettigan, you might worry that aerial threat might even be more dangerous to Kilcar, because I've seen in the past the likes of St Michael's torn apart by Kilcar, but maybe in the last 20 minutes, last quarter, St Michael's have gone direct. Michael Langan on one leg nearly beat Kilcar, I think it was last year, in a very wet and dour game up in Townie, so it probably gives Kilcara a lot to think about. Of course, looking at it objectively, it's a boost for them that a player of Owen's qualities is not available, but at the same time, it might mean that Glenties might decide to be a little bit more direct, and maybe a Kilcar, defensive 6 or 7 that hasn't that, huge physical threat or height, it could even spell more trouble for them, Charlie.
Somebody suggested to me, Frank, that you could name 13 out of the 15 that Kilcar will probably start, with doubts about maybe a couple of positions and who might fill them. Not that they'll be any weaker, but there's maybe 3 or 4 guys vying for 2 positions or so. With Niamh Connell, Martin Regan's hand is so strong, it'll be very difficult to pick the starting 15.
Well, that's the thing. I know Alan says, you look at league form, it doesn't count for much this year, but I wouldn't be concerned, but if I was Kilcara, I'd be a bit concerned insofar as that it probably counts for something in terms of give Martin Regan the chance to look at more players, give them more game time, and I think you have to look at these high-end these high-end club games now a wee bit like you might look at an inter-county game. Who can finish the game strongest? And I think Glenties with that their pack, as you say, that 21, 22, 23, 24 options, I mean, they are going to be there, at their best in the last 15 minutes. So I think for Kilcar, Kilcar probably need to make a fast start. I think they need to at least score 1 goal, and they need to be the side with maybe 3, 4, 5 point lead, at the 45-minute mark, because Glenties have those options that come in. And listen, I've been at club games and I find it difficult to comprehend the quality that they still have available to them without their county boys. It's frightening. But like I said, Kilcar, it's not a 50-50 game. I think Glenties are obvious favourites, but this is a game Kilcar can definitely win. If they go at them with, the kind of style and that kind of counter-attacking that we know they do, and it's not just the Ryan McHughs or the Paddy McBreartys, you have the Steve McBreartys, the Conor Dohertys, the McLeans. These boys can move ball through hands very quickly, and they're the best team, I think, in the county at cutting you open from their own defensive third to the final third in the matter, 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds. So I think John McNulty needs to throw the kitchen sink at this from the very, very off and have something under the belt and under the last quarter, because if Glenties are thereabouts, that experience, that system, just that know-how, it'll grind to a finish in their favour.
Well, the last time these two met in the final, it was 7-4, so there was no kitchen sinks thrown that day anyway, Frank. There were kitchen sinks built, I think, down near the 220-yard lines. Neil, from a player's perspective, you've waited almost a year for a final. I mean, how do players deal with that situation? There's players been away with the county, haven't played with the club at all. There's boys who were playing for the club during that period thinking, have I a chance of getting in on both teams as well? I mean, psychologically, is this almost impossible to comprehend that this is a county final for you?
Well, I suppose for the club players that are training away and, and playing them league games there when the county boys were absent, like they're kind of, they're mad to get playing even when the county boys come back, when they want to be starting, because at the end of the day, even though it is last year's final, it is still a county final, and whoever wins it's going to have a championship medal, which is a massive thing. And for them then, when they see the lift, because of the talent that I know McGettigan now coming back, so while lost for Niamh Connell, but the talent like of Kieran Thompson not coming back, and Jack McKelvey, and then you have the McHughes and McBrearty and all them boys, the club players will get a massive lift out of them boys coming up, and the standard in both camps is going to just rise, and the training and stuff like that. Preparing for it, the league never, it gives both teams a chance to kind of, I suppose, see what other players they have, and especially Niamh Connell, they have a massive squad.
Well, we know Glen Solly never took the league too seriously. That they always win the championship. Can you apply that to everybody? That the league is just an end to a means, or a means to an end, or whatever?
Possibly, the league's just it's a matter of playing games, but at the same time, you want a bit of form. But when the championship comes, it's just totally different. And even the week of the championship, or even when you're coming on the championship, the thing about it now that the league's finished, and for them for now this last 2 weeks since Donegal was finished, and they're just focusing fully on this game, and I suppose I think now as regards that both camps getting prepared for it, and because it was meant to be on last year, I think the fact that both camps, both teams have been there and thereabouts this last good few years, played that final in 2017, and I don't know, I would say there's plenty of needle. Kilcare's not going to want to get beat again, Niamh Connell and that, and I think that'll be, it'll be both teams will have no bother getting.
So it's not a huge disadvantage. The point I was making earlier on about you've played your group games and then you've played a quarter final and then your semi-final. You don't think that'll be a big disadvantage because this is a county final? Because
it's a county final, and like Glen and Eve Connell will be going mad to do back to back, like, and it's a long time since it's been done, like, and that'll be driving them on. But no, I don't think it'll like if you imagine being a club player now and you're looking forward to a county final and knowing that, you know, in a couple of weeks then you're starting another championship, like, it's you wouldn't want to be going into the next championship, 21 championship, after getting beat, like, you know. So I don't think they'll have no wild bother, like, you know. I wouldn't mind being getting prepared for it, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Alan, just looking at Niamh Connell, I mean, you could nearly say they've become unbeatable. I mean, you gave a stat earlier on about how many matches in a row they've won, but I mean, their attitude in that final against Gweedore, you know, they just weren't going to be beaten in those 3 matches. And I mean, they went in there as underdogs against the Gweedore team that had won the Ulster Club Championship the week before. So since that, they look like a team that no matter what the circumstances are, we're not going to be beaten.
I think they kept their eye on the ball there, because there was a lot of talk around before the second game, you know, if it's level again, what do we do? You know, there's Ulster Club on next weekend, and Niamh Connell just kept their eye on the ball. Leo McClune said after the final, if they wanted to play us on Friday night, we'll play it on Friday night. If they wanted to play the game on Saturday night, we'll play them again.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what got them through that series of games. And for a team then to go straight into Ulster on the following Sunday in Cavan, you know, they had their day or two, you know, enjoying themselves, but like they refocused well, got a good win in Cavan, and that run took them on to the Ulster final. But like there's so much work being done at the club, Charlie, and the reason the squad is the way it is the older guys are still there because they want to be part of this. They know they're probably in a special time. You know, they have a chance now of back-to-back, as Neil says. Then they've good underage structures with a lot of their senior players coaching teams. So they're coming up as well. So the squad is inflating then, the size of it. And that's given Martin Regan plenty to think about. But like they're all kind of good problems to have. Like the selection worries he has, plenty of managers would love to have them.
Yeah. Frank, would you say Kilcar will be less enthusiastic about what happened with the final being called? Because they certainly were on a roll last year into that final. That performance against Gweedore was hugely impressive. That, I mean, Gweedore weren't the team they were the year before, but you know, Kilcar blew them away in a bad day in O'Donnell Park. And I think, would they be more disappointed that final wasn't played then and they had to wait the guts of 10 months for it to happen?
I don't know. If you weigh up the variables, I suppose we're talking about a pandemic and it kind of wiped out everybody's, you know, year. So in terms of football, it probably became secondary to a point. But, you know, times lapsed, and if you're trying to maybe even take any kind of form or hint from those semi-finals, I think Alan made the point that I think Gweedore had already imploded last year. They were there for the taking. I think Kilcar, you know, and Letterkenny were very impressive that there. The St Eunan's Glenties one, I thought there could have been more read into that there, in a sense that maybe Kilcar would have felt it would have been a good time to get Niamh Connell, because I think St Eunan's, you know, probably felt they were in a position they had that there game won. You know, an individual error at the end maybe, you know, will let them in for a goal that won the game for Glenties and springboard them into another final. So maybe Kilcar would have felt on the evidence of that there that they were there to be got at, because again, it was a cagey enough performance by Niamh Connell. We talk about the quality that they have, and it's not a criticism, but sometimes you wonder, you know, if you compared them to like a Ferrari, are they been driven in second or third gear? Like, what could they do if they cut loose? It's easy for me sitting here, Charlie, and saying that that's the way, you know, Martin Regan or Shea Murn should set them up. But it's a very different thing when you're putting out a side maybe to won championships. And I know Brenton Devaney is a great advocate of this change of play and change of approach, that football's not fun. If you're getting medals in your back pocket, Charlie, football's a lot of fun, regardless of how you're winning it or doing it. Yeah. Mightn't be much fun for other sides that maybe have to imitate or maybe conform to a certain style as well, simply because sides mirror sides now, and maybe sides will set up and we've seen sides maybe sit back on Glenties, and you talk about that county final where them and Kilcar probably just kind of stared each other out. That can happen, but again, they're the sides that probably don't enjoy, not so much the so-called top four, but you know, we look at the also rans in Division 1 that are maybe trying to set up to beat these sides. Football probably isn't as much fun as it used to be in that sense, but for the sides that are picking up trophies, and especially Dr. Maguire's, regardless, it's about winning it. Who cares, you know, how you play? And I know there is that maybe underlying, and again, criticism is the wrong word, because I think Martin Regan's doing a fantastic job. But you just wonder, like, what could they do if they cut loose? You there's potential to go to another level, and I think they've played off the cuff in the league. There probably hasn't been much direction, and the scope's been given to players to go out kind of and express themselves, and maybe there might be a hint of what to do there, because you don't stand still when you're winning. You add something different every year. So we don't know what Naomh Conaill are going to bring in a county final, because we simply don't have a reference point this year. Again, we're wondering, what does the league count for? Maybe it's giving Glenties a hint of something different. So it's going to be a very interesting first 5, 10, 15 minutes. Like we've said that Kilcar need to start well, because if Glenties get in front, I mean, they're counter-attacking, and if you go with them, that's when they make hay against you. But who knows? Glenties might bring a different approach this year altogether, and it might throw Kilcar's best laid plans out the window.
Yeah. You had a plan for Kilcar when you played them. A rain dance helped to get the rain coming down, Neil, I know, but I mean, you played them in a certain way that particular day in the early stages, because you couldn't afford to let them get away from you, and you didn't do that, and then you wore them down and that sort of thing. Can Naomh Conaill play that way? They tried to play that way against them in that final, and then Kilcar, as Frank quite rightly said, sort of matched them up, and it was a very poor final. So, tactically, what have Kilcar to be thinking about?
Well, I would think maybe possibly Kilcar learned a lot from that final in 16, to go out. And I mean, watching the game in 17, like, they just, when there were 2 points up or whatever, I think Ryan Mchugh got a point in the second half one stage, and they maybe put them 2 up or whatever, and they just kept that, and they were happy enough to do that. Now, I would say Naomh Conaill and like Regan, because like Regan's tactically very smart, like, and the senior players he has, like, Anthony Thompson and Leo and that, like, there'll be, I would say, have a fair influence on the whole thing as well. I'd say they'd be disappointed that day in 17 that they didn't push, because they had to push forward, like, to try and get a few more scores. Now, since that, like, I know, like, Cador, I think in 18 were unstoppable, like, and I don't know, I think any team was going to beat them that year. 19, like, to beat Cador in 19, that was, great. I know 23 games, like, but that was some achievement, and they've learned. And since that there, like, I mean, you nearly said in 18, Cador, when they won Ulster and all that, they could dominate now for a while. Yeah. Now, Naomh Conaill coming and beating them in 3 games in was there
more credit and more kudos for Naomh Conaill, the fact that it took 3 games to beat them, that Cador got 3 chances at it?
I think so. Like, it's again, as Alan says about Liam McClune saying they would have played the Ulster game on the Friday, like, it, Frank and saying it was all about winning, like, and I mean. Regan's a smart operator, like, he knows and he knows his players, and he knows, and they've been putting up big scores in the league this year, like, and that they have the players to do it. But he'll be going in there now thinking, like, you have Patrick and Stephen and Ryan Mchugh and Owen and McLean's and Conor Doherty, and they're Mark Mchugh and Kieran McGinley. They're all fast, mobile players, and if you just set up kind of 15 against 15, like, they could, tear through you, because they are brilliant like that. Like, they've done it to them in 16 to Naomh Conaill and that, but I don't think he'll allow that, like, and he'll be thinking it is all about winning, like, and he's not going to be overly concerned, like, if
we're not happy with it.
No, and if it's a low scoring game too, like, and I'd be surprised if they go all out attacking, like, because Kilcar have great ability, like the players they have, even their half backs and stuff like that, and the young fellas they have coming through, like, they're all similar type players. They're all great in the ball and stuff like that, and well comfortable in the ball, and can do a lot of damage, like, so. No, it'll be interesting to see. Kilcar, like, don't know if they'll change much anyway. They'll just go and try and play to their strengths anyway, like, they'll kind of look to get the ball to Patrick and the boys like that, and no, it's a lot of talent on show. You'd love to see a game that's like 2-16 to 2-15 or something like. But
unlikely.
I don't think so.
All right, Neil, I'm going to take a break there, and when we come back, I'm going to talk to the boys about the players that might make the difference. Maybe there'll be 1 or 2 surprises there as well. Many thanks to Kelly Centra here at the Mountaintop for their continued support for our podcast of the Michael Murphy Sports and Leisure Championship. Just to remind you that the Kelly's Diner is now open for all your favourites, and there's a €5 special early bird breakfast. If you're about in the morning, it's well worth a visit there. Rejoin us after this break. And you're welcome back to Donegal Sport Hub, Donegal Daily Championship podcast here. We're looking forward to the Michael Murphy Sports and Leisure Championship final of 2020 between Naomh Conaill and Kilcar this Saturday evening in Mchugh Park in Ballybofey. And many thanks to Kelly Centre for their support. They have their €11 steak dinner deals across the road from us here if you'd like to call in and take advantage of that. I'm joined here by Alan Foley, the sports editor of the Donegal Democrat, Frank Craig, sports reporter with the Donegal News, and All-Ireland winner and All-Star Neil Gallagher from Glen Swilly. Neil, I'm going to start again with you. You were talking about players that make the difference and that sort of stuff. If Kilcar are going to win, let's say that they're underdogs, and not by much, but let's say Glenties are favourites. Who has to make the difference for Kilcar to get over the line?
Well, if you're a player in Kilcar and you're a half back or a half forward or midfield or whatever, like, you're going to be wanting to get the ball to Patrick. Like, if that was me, anyway, I'd be wanting to get the ball into Patrick, and because you can see the damage that he can do in there, like, and he's just got so much ability, and if he's on song, like, he's just, the speed that he has, like, and the accuracy and stuff, like, and I don't think Naomh Conaill will give him as much room as they would like, but. Yeah. Patrick's going to have a major one. Mark Mchugh around the middle, like, he's a madly experienced player now. Like, he's about maybe 31, 32, and like, for all, like, say Mark there, Kieran McGinley is maybe a couple of years older than that. Like, for all the talent that they have and stuff and all, like, Mark's going to be wanting to win more. Like, not saying he's nowhere near finished, like, but he's getting on, and he's going to be wanting more than one championship medal, like, because of the ability they have. So he's a smart player, like, he's a very smart player for Kilcar, and he's going to know that the fact that for them to win as well, they're going to need the likes of Patrick and that having big games. And obviously then Ryan Mchugh, like, he's one of the, like, he's one of the best players in Ireland, like, when he's in form. And the fact for Kilcar, for Naomh Conall's not going to, they're like, Regan's smart, like, he's not going to try and allow them to have as big influence as they would like, so he's going to try and limit that. Now, for Kilcar, they're going to want every other player that's, like McLean's and them boys, and Conor Doherty, Owen McHugh, all them boys to have a massive influence. But at the end of the day, them boys like Patrick and Ryan and Mark, I think them.
You need your big players.
I think you need your big players, like, and they are exceptional players, like, they're talented players, like, and have that ability. You just need them, and
they need to perform.
That's who they do.
Yeah. Naomh Conaill, Neil's alluded to it. Martin Regan, smart guy. We've seen that tactically fantastic and that sort of stuff. He's going to do man-to-man marking on job. That's fine. That's good. But he's going to need creative people as well. Frank, who's going to make the difference for them? Because they have, as Alan, I think, said earlier, they have that mixture of very experienced players and younger players. But who has to shine for them to make sure they won?
Kieran Thompson, I think, is the obvious standout one. We go back to last year's semi-final. I mean, the point that he kicked right at the end, it was a give and go. And I think he showed on a number of levels just the intelligence and the quality that he has. The one player he looked for that give and go, and he had to wait 5 or 6 seconds, it was Owen McGettigan, because he knew Owen was fit to get out in front of a packed defence and won it. And when he got it back, if you look back at the video, he throws about 2 or 3 different kind of hand dummies to engineer that clip, like, under severe pressure out on the left-hand side, and splits the post. Like, he's a quality player, and he always turns up for Glenties. He never has a bad game in the big games, and listen, sides make provisions for him, but he still manages to find that yard, that space, and he's a super kicker from distance on that left foot. People know about it, but knowing about it and stopping it are two different things. You look at the likes of Charlie McGuinness inside. I mean, I've been very impressed with how Charlie has worked himself into a quality player. I remember watching Charlie growing up at school level and maybe underage for Glenties. He was a big lad that, looked to have quality about him. He could hit a free. He was physical, but you always felt that he would need to work a wee bit harder if he's going to make the cut at senior for Glenties. And fair play to him, he's knuckled down. Yeah. He's a lot sharper now. He can one ball out in front. He can one ball direct. So he's been a great, not fine for them because we've known about him, but he's added something different in there. And I think the worry would be that, again, I don't know if it's a worry on the day against Kilkear. But I don't know if Glenties at the minute, without Owen McGettigan, have a marquee county quality game-changing forward, a go-to man, because they've a lot of maybe height and physicality in there, but they don't have a Patrick McBurty, you know. And Neil's talked about Patrick there. He kind of just touched on it. He's a serious operator. We've seen it in spells this year for Donegal that if he's allowed to cut loose, he'll do serious damage. So it'll be interesting to see if it comes to scores and they are at a premium and things are tight. Glenties do have players maybe in that middle third or maybe to the edge of their final third that can kick points. You think the likes of Dermot Malloy if he starts coming on a loop. So it's going to be interesting to see in that their sense who makes a difference. Again, Kilkear, we talk about the boys in the fringes of the obvious, and I know Mark McHugh's not a fringe player, but we always pigeonhole Mark in as this maybe, you know, sweeping individual that played county. I think what people have kind of noticed in the last 2 years is when Mark's been playing midfield for Kilkear, people realise again how good of an actual footballer he is. He's hitting frees. He's taking frees to link play. There's serious quality there. He was much more than just a sweeper. So I think if Kilkear maybe targets some of those experienced players we've talked about, Glenties, you know, put them on the back foot. Let's see what's left in the legs of the Anthony Thompsons, the Owen Wades, the Marty Boyles of Glenties decide to go with those lads. Run at them, you know, speed thrills, and they have the Conor Dohertys, the Stephen McBurtys, the Ryan McHughes, and you know, they're lads that, as Neil says, you have the best of intentions of how you want to play, but if you give those small avenues in between your lines, you know, those boys can destroy you in 5-6 seconds. So it's going to be an interesting tactical battle. And listen, we've talked about Martin Regan. John McNulty is no mug either. I've never met a Kilkear man that wasn't cute. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that there all plays out as well. Yeah. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating, Alan, and I mean, Frank's alluded to it. You've got the Leos and the Anthonys and the Brick and Marty Boyle and Brendan McDyer. Those guys have been around for seemingly forever, you know. And it always amazes me when I go to watch the enthusiasm they play with and the effort they put in. I mean, Martin has big calls to make in terms of starting 15 and who's going to be coming off the bench and that sort of thing. But does he need that experience, given the fact that we haven't had a build-up to this championship final, that he hasn't been able to blood lads in the red heat of championship, and he knows he can depend on them when the chips are down?
Yeah, that's probably what won the semi-final for them against St Eunan's. They just had that little bit more experience, and the same thing happened against St Eunan's the year before when they won by a point as well. So I was going to try and give you a couple of players that might have an impact, but the boys kind of burned me there the whole way through. But
go ahead now.
Well, I agree. I know it's so obvious, but I think if Patrick McBurty has a game, I think as Frank says, I think Glenties have probably, Niamh Connell, is a bit better maybe spread of scoring forwards, but in Patrick you have the one guy who is, you know, of real county, you know, standard. So he is absolutely paramount to their chances of success, obviously. And I suppose we've kind of forgotten, since I was just reading back on it, AJ Gallagher was actually sent off in the semi-final, but he's since been cleared, and that's the sort of job AJ has been doing. You know, they might even kind of have a second man, you know, when Patrick likes the peel there, maybe somebody's blocked that space. So, as I said, as obvious as it sounds, I think a lot of Kilkear's hope do hang on Patrick. For Niamh Connell, I suppose there's more players, but I do agree with Frank as well. The fact that Owen McGettigan was the guy, he's got that little bit of magic. And even I was at a game a couple of weeks ago, he came on against Killybegs, and you could see every time he got the ball, he just had eyes for goal, you know. Yeah. And a huge loss, as we were saying earlier on,
Neil, you mentioned it as well. Ryan Mchugh, I mean, outstanding footballer, not only at club level and county level, but countrywide he's been. But he gets special attention in every game. Some people would, I know we're a bit biased when it comes to Donegal, he gets too much attention that he doesn't get protection from. I mean, Glenties are going to have to make some kind of a plan for him as well, because if you allow him to run the game, I'll take, for example, the Down game in the championship this year. I thought was his best game for quite some time, because he was allowed, he got a bit of space or whatever reason. He can dictate a game if you allow him to carry the ball from his own 45, and he can create problems.
Oh, big time. When I seen him coming at the start, I thought he was a great player. That's all through the years there. When he first, I think it was 13 was his first year, and 13, 14, 15, I thought this man's up on the top, or the top level of kind of players that, you know, are there. Because he never gives up. He's great on the ball. He started, noticed a lot the year, even with Donegal. He started kick passing. He's a great kick passer. He started kicking a lot. I think it was Patrick had a lovely ball outside of the boot on against Down that day.
Yeah.
His score taking abilities. He kicked, I think it was 4 that day or whatever it was. a great player and a great engine and massive speed. And whoever Niamh Connell put on him, it's going to be like a long day for them.
Job and a half.
Now, listen, Kilcare's not going to let Niamh Connell's players, like Kieran Thompson, that they're going to kind of
make a plan
for them as such as well. Now for like Ryan and Patrick playing, they're the same age roughly, and I mean for them playing with each other for so long as well. Like Ryan's cute enough operator to know that, listen, for him, to get the ball into Patrick as well, it's going to be a massive thing. And I mean, he's like Mark, they're smart players, he'd probably play around the half back line, and attack from there. But in saying that, the Rico players that are nearly the same. Mchugh's like a brilliant player attacking as well. But it'll like they'll not.
It's an interesting point. Just I'll make it to you. If you were picking the Kilcare team, would you put Ryan Mchugh in the half back line, or would you put him in the half forward line? Because I've heard arguments that he's wasted back there. He's having to defend too much. He's have to do too much defensive work where he should be offensive. That should be the priority for him.
No, I would keep him half back. I think because he can do more damage coming onto the ball. He's a bit like Lee Keegan for me. Well, I think he's wasted in the full back line. I know he's a great player in the full back line, and they need him to do like Mark and Jay McConnelly or Kilkenny or something like that. But I think they're missing the trick by not playing him in the half back line because he's so good attacking. Ryan, I would keep him on the half back line because you're kind of, I suppose, facing the ball a lot. When you're like, say there's kick out coming out and there's a break and he's attacking it more, and you're able to kind of break on the speed that he has. Where if you're in the half forward line, a player like him that wants to get on the ball, it's different to say the likes of Niall O'Donnell for St Eunan's. He's a centre forward and he wants to get on like that kind of. He knows the runs to make there. Ryan more so maybe I think more likes coming on it and stuff.
Lines.
And the fact like if you want to be loose, like I see it there even so like some McNeilis there for Gidor, if he's playing with a county, you nearly play him midfield because midfielders get it loose, they like kind of nobody hanging off them. If you've somebody hanging off you inside,
they get handy jobs, midfielders.
Handy, but like they don't want it, and you get more freedom from the halfback, I think, and that's I would play on there.
Where would you play him, Alan?
I think I agree with Neil. He's better coming on the ball. I'd say Jack McKelvey might be the man entrusted with the job there. So
that'll be interesting.
You see, Jack can give it plenty as well. You see, so he could put Brian the other way. So I think maybe they might kind of match fire with fire in that front.
Frank.
It's kind of an interesting question. I know with Donegal, people probably are wondering, should you play him in the half forward line? And I understand that if you did at that level, there should probably be enough quality that you aren't worrying about who's filling holes in the half back line. But at this level, where you have a certain standard of a player, and we're talking about county players and then maybe lesser, I think from half back he has the potential to do serious damage in a game like this here, simply because you are going to have weak links on both sides, simply because they're not at the level that the two county or respective county clusters are at. So no, definitely, as Neil says, if you're facing the ball and you're breaking on the stuff, there's you have the ability, and especially with the directness he has, to link play and get on the end of it as well. And that's what Kilcare do better than anybody. And again, play to your strengths. And I think Ryan Mchugh getting forward, and Ryan will go where he wants as well. He's one of those players that he's intelligent. And I know football at the minute, you paint by numbers to a degree where you're probably saturating individuals with information. Ryan is a very, very cerebral and smart lad, where I think just go and let him do his thing. Do you know that there? Way. All
right, you get the salute ready with the other two boys. Well, decide who's going to do one, because that's going to be the next question.
I'm just going to interrupt you quite quickly. It's amazing the month that's in it. We haven't even touched on it. It's the two goalkeepers. Football at the level it's gone to, the madness that we've seen in the last fortnight. It's going to be very interesting to see Steve McGrath, and I think it's Kevin Campbell that's doing goals for Kilcare this year. So, how both those lads maybe perform under what serious stress out the field, because you're talking two sides that have a lot going on and a lot of thinking and a lot of tactics. So whichever one of those lads maybe blinks first or gets spooked early, could have we'll touch the first on.
We'll touch on when we come back. We'll take another break there. Thanks to Kelly's Diner here at the centre, or Kelly's Centre at the mountain top, and their diner is now available. You can dine out there, and you'll be well looked after. We'll be back after this short break to just get who the boys think will win the Michael Murphy Championship final here in Mchugh Park next weekend. And you're welcome back once again to Donegal Daily, Donegal Sport Hub podcast here. It's the Championship podcast for 2020, the 2020 final between Naomh Conaill, the holders, and Kilcar on this weekend. And with me in studio are Alan Foley, Frank Craig and Neil Gallagher. We appreciate them coming in to talk to us about it. We were talking about who might make the big difference. Frank made a very good point before we came back, before we went to the break, in relation to the goalkeepers. Neil, you've seen it evolve in your time. Goalkeepers had very little to do in Gaelic football at one stage. Just make sure that trying goals didn't go past and look after your small parallelogram. The kick out has become so important. Joining in the play has become important. I mean, we might not see much of that at the weekend, but we saw it at All-Ireland level with Began and Morgan, didn't we? At the Ulster final. The two goalkeepers, the kick outs now have become so important.
Massive. I don't think they'll be coming out the field too much. The John McNulty and Regan will be having be telling them to get back in that kind of way. But kick-outs wise, like, you know, Naomh Conaill kind of target, like if Kieran Gallagher's playing, even Kieran Thompson's great in there and stuff like that. And both teams will know that, you know, with the kick-outs, if you get clean possession around the middle, and like we're chatting a lot about, you know, the speed that Kilcar have, but Glenties, you know, have great ability going forward as well. Naomh Conaill have great ability. I think, you know, Mark Mchugh and Kieran McGinley around the middle too. Like, you know, if you're the two of them, you're going to be wanting kick-outs out the middle too. And I was said earlier, like, if you catch a kick-out and Ryan McHugh or Owen's coming off you, like, and there's space there, like, if Naomh Conaill push up and Kilcar push up, then it's a great opportunity to exploit the fact that there's go long, won the break or won a kick-out, give it to one of the fast runners clean, and try and get it inside to the danger man in before they have the sweepers and all, you know, or defenders kind of back in place, you know.
Can that happen now, Alan? Because there'll be a push up on the kick out, which might force, as Neil says, the goalkeeper to kick it long. But they're very reluctant to do that. You know, they want to retain possession, and by doing that, it allows the other team then to, you know, set up and make things very difficult. We saw it at the minor semi-final. Armagh were getting 13 players. They were pressing, but if they didn't get the kick out, they were racing back then.
Absolutely, yeah. I said to you at the start, Charlie, I think there might be a caginess just because these two teams have basically not been full strength on paper since last September. And I think if there's a caginess, it means they won't be pushing up quite so early, so that might enable the two goalkeepers maybe to get it off short and maybe to let teams build. And it's like even that year 2016, like really what Glenspilly tried to do was not let Kilcar run kind of and not get caught up the field. Like, you kind of tried to block the avenues and stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if they actually set up like that, which makes it a little bit easier for the goalkeepers just to get them off.
Would you kick it in long, Neil? I remember in that final, you had the possession a couple of times early on and Murphy was inside, but you didn't kick it. I think it was the third attempt or the third chance you had to kick it before you kicked it, and you just can't kick it aimlessly. You've got to try and find that target man.
No, well, a lot of it can depend on the day too, because that was a bad day, you know, and wet and stuff, and you know, balls are maybe more a habit to slip and you know, stuff like that. But well, if Rory Gallagher used to, when I was managing, he used to always get on to me about passing the ball to Murphy all the time, and I used to say to him, if you were playing centre forward, you would pass the ball to him as well, you know. And if I had Patrick inside and you know, he was looking for the ball, I'll be kicking it on him, and whoever's in with him as well, like, you know, and like Steve McBurdy's a brilliant player as well, with great ability. I would, we might be out the field a bit, but no, I would be like, if Niamh Conlon go with maybe Kieran Gallagher inside, like in Dill, I always think, you know, there's more of a chance of something, you know, happening on there if you get any kind of a break, and a goal just makes a massive change in everything, and like it's no, I would.
You'd kick her on. Right, Frank. Who? 60-40, I think you said earlier on, Niamh Conlon, Kilcar. I mean, is that your gut telling you that, or do you think there's a good reason for that, or what?
I think the good reason for it is simply the Glenties' strength and depth of their squad, and in that last 15 minutes they're going to be bringing in, you know, quality stuff, and if they have a point or two already in the bag and are leading Kilcar, it'll only go one way. And I think 60-40 is probably a fair reflection. That said, if Kilcar get their tactics right and go at them very early on, you know, jumpstart Glenties into a reaction. Glenties will have a way of playing that they'll want to settle into a routine and get into that there. But if Kilcar could bang in a goal in the first 5 or 10 minutes, Charlie, it rips up Glenties' template where they're going to have to go chasing. 3 points is a big thing in a county final. And, you know, we chatted earlier about, you know, going direct. At the same time, you know, I don't think even if Glenties did decide to go direct, they mightn't even have to worry about breaking ball. I think the likes of, you know, Charlie McGuinness, Big Nathan Byrne and Kieran Gallagher are capable of winning primary possession and close to goal. That's the difference. I think we're talking in height and that full back line. But, you know, a caveat to all that there, as we talked about Patrick being the premier forward on display, I still think Kieran McGinley is the premier orthodox midfielder still involved in this game. Talk about Kieran Thompson. That's still to a degree a square peg in a round hole. You know, McGinley is a handful at club level. I know he was in out of Donegal squads, but this man here will tell you he's a quality operator. And Kilcar, you know, Conor McShane was in there for a long time at full back, you know, into his 40s, but you only miss someone when they're gone. And listen, Conor was able to, you know, wrestle with the best of them, you know, wrestled with Michael Murphy over the years. Serious strength and physicality, and I think they're missing that there at the minute. Brian O'Donnell was a great find, but Brian unfortunately had a very bad injury last year. So I think it's 60-40, but I would not, if I was trying to make money and be a bet man, I would throw my money on Kilcar because there's money to be made. But if it was my own money, I would be sticking it on Niamh Conlon.
Okay. Where's your money going on?
I kind of was always back in Niamh Conlon from the start. Even like, I think the margins are getting tighter. A couple of weeks ago, I haven't seen them in a couple of league games. I thought there was no chance Kilcar could beat them, but Kilcar kind of grown on me since that, like when you knuckle down and kind of talk about it. But I'll just go with the original hunch of Niamh Conlon, not by much. I'd love to see both teams back themselves and go for it. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not.
Yeah.
But I think like we have got probably the two best attacking teams in the county in the final. Maybe it'll open up, maybe it won't, but I'll stick with Niamh Conlon.
There's such a contrast between the last two championship meetings they had, with the semi-final where Kilcar just blew Niamh Conlon away. Niamh Conlon tried to play it man for man, it didn't work. They came back to the end of the final now, for obvious reasons, didn't play, but Kilcar still beat them. I mean, does that stick in your head as a player, Neil?
Well, I would say both teams have learned from that. Kilcar, you know, Niamh Conlon definitely, as I say, they have, like, see the likes of Leo and that. I mean, he's about 31 or 32, and Owen Wade and Anthony. And they're experienced players, and they know like they're not no way concerned about the scoreline of if it's high or low or if it's a high scoring game. All they're wanting to do is win. As regards for a verdict, I was thinking that Niamh Connell, like say if the championship, this was ordinary times now, and it was the championship was starting now, I would be back, and I think they would not be stopped. And I was thinking that up until even this week then, but now the closer it gets to the game, as I say, if this was the start, the group stages of the championship, I'd still be putting me on the line because they have a great squad, players that they can bring in and replace other players, and they have great experience, Then the more just when you mention all them players and that for Kilcar having that, just maybe this one-off game, I wouldn't put any money on because I think it's a tight game,
50-50.
I think so now. As I say, if the championship is starting now, 2021, say, and it was group stages and all that there, I don't think Niamh Connell would be touched. I think they're a bit ahead of the other teams. But see this one-off game, the players that are there in Kilcar are experienced as well, and this is a chance, of another medal, and it's so hard to do back to back. Like it's probably St. Juniors is probably back. Is it 07 and 08 and all? 06. It's probably, and I mean, the time they were 118, like everybody thought. I thought anyway that when they're seeing their team and these boys are going to dominate now. I did tip Niamh Connell to beat them in that final in 19.
Did you?
I didn't think it would go to 3 games now, but I didn't say they would beat them. But I'm not going to tip them this time. No, I think I'll just go with Kilcar. I think,
So two for Niamh Connell, 1 for Kilcar. Right, we're going to take a short break then, and when we come back, we're going to look forward to the Ulster minor final because we're delighted to say that what's been a difficult time for Donegal teams in recent weeks and months. We haven't been doing too well, unfortunately, but the minors have done us proud and they've reached an Ulster final. They're going to be playing Tyrone on Friday night. We're not quite sure where the venue is yet, but after this break, in association with Kelly Centre here at the Mountain Top, and of course their diner is now open for all your favourites. Come back and hear what the boys think the Donegal minors will do at the weekend. And you're welcome back to the final part of our championship podcast in association with Kelly Centre at the Mountain Top. We've looked at the Michael Murphy Sports and Leisure Championship final Saturday evening at 8 o'clock in Mchugh Park. Niamh Conall against Kilcar. Neil has gone for Kilcar. Frank and Alan have gone for Niamh Conall. We'll be back next week to see who was right and who was wrong. I'm really looking forward to that. But let's look forward to the Ulster minor final as well, because Donegal, after victories over Antrim, Monaghan and Armagh are through to the final against Tyrone, who've beaten Down, and Fermanagh in the quarter-final and the semi-final. Donegal in the preliminary round, of course. Neil, a couple of Glenswally lads in the squad. Young Gallagher starting. Connell, is it? O'Donnell, sorry, and young Gary Kelly's come off the bench for the matches as well. So I'm sure the club proud at that, and both have contributed greatly to the 3 matches so far.
Aye, big time. O'Donnell started every game cornerback, and Gary's come on in the 3 games and made a good difference. Had a good score the last day and stuff. So 2 good players out with us. Like, I'd have seen them a lot there playing underage and that. Donald still has another year next year to be playing. His brother Jack as well was on the under-20s as well. Yeah. Like, so there's
talent there.
There's talent there, and the family, their uncles and all, they're a tough breed out there. And
we know.
His uncles, they're good. So they're 2 tough boys.
Any connection with yourself?
No connection. But they're 2 good players. Gary Kelly there as well. There's a lot of cycling and stuff, and he's a fit fella, like, and a good footballer as well. Like, so it's exciting for them, like, to preparing for the final.
And history shows that Ulster minor finals have been difficult for Donegal to win. So Luke Barr's done a great job in bringing this group through. And believe it or not, Neil, the Glenswally lads are the only players from Division 1 teams that are in the squad. I mean, that's pretty remarkable.
Hard to believe that. All right, when you can see all the big clubs, like, it's an amazing stat, like, but it just shows you that there's plenty
good work going on.
And there's plenty of players out around the county, and stuff like. And no, it's an amazing stat. Like, it is hard to believe, but for them to go through from the preliminary round, stuff like that, and get an Ulster final, it'd be a great way to win the final.
Yeah. Frank, I mean, they beat Antrim. Antrim were poor that night. Very different game then against Monaghan and Clonus. They had a player sent off in the first half. They were leading by a couple of points at half time. Monaghan came out bang, bang, bang. 3 points in a row from young Connolly, I think it was, Alan, the centre. Was it Connolly you called him? I'm not sure. Centre half
Stephen
forward.
Mooney.
That's correct. Yeah. And I was at the game and I thought, we're up against it here now. But they rallied and they were fantastic in the second half. Gary Kelly came off. Young Michael Callan from Naomh Columba came off. They got scores. Luke McGlynn kicked an incredible point during that as well. And then last weekend, terrible conditions, rain-wise. The pitch was very, very wet in Omagh. Low-scoring game against a defensive Armagh team, but they showed great patience. They were 4-2 down at half time. Lucky to be that close now, because Armagh had missed a number of chances, but they came back in the second half and did what they needed to do to win it. So good signs there.
Good signs. I'd actually seen them in the flesh against Antrim that night now, but it was a facile one. They probably learnt nothing from it. The only benefit was that it was a preliminary round, Charlie, and I suppose the year that's been in it, or the season that's been in it, it's good just to get a competitive game of sorts under the belt. They've had to work much harder since, and listen, that'll only stand to them. Like, we talk about, maybe at under 17, it's been probably an inconvenience for county senior and under 20 sides, never mind what it's been like for Luke Barrett maybe and a gang of under 17s, where you're juggling at the best of times, maybe things like college exams, school and different commitments. I know summertime that probably hasn't been as big a concern or issue, but I like the look of them in terms of the way they moved the ball that night. Again, the caveat is that you're talking about Antrim, who were so poor.
Yeah.
But what they've gone to since against like Monaghan and Armagh, I think it'll only stand to them. Tyrone are a different level completely, insofar as that the pedigree that maybe the likes of Tyrone operated at schools level and college level, it means they're probably that wee bit further down the road, ticking a few different boxes. The box that they probably will tick that would be the most maybe concerning for Luke Barrett would be the S&C or the physicality one. They'll probably be bigger. They'll probably be more compact in terms of the units that they are. But listen, it's a final, and if they can show the same desire and commitment, because they will be up against it at certain points, but not chucking in the towel is a great sign of a group of young fellas. And I laughed at Neil telling that Donegal or wasn't a cousin or a relative of his. You should never make the mistake of guessing just because you have a famous second name in a club, because Jerry McLaughlin spent about 10 minutes asking young Luke McGlynn about the McGlynn lineage and heritage of Glenfinnan, and poor Luke had to tell Jerry that he wasn't actually related to Frank. So always ask the question first and be careful in that sense.
That's good advice. Alan, they've shown great resolve. We did a Zoom call, or we were part of a Zoom call with Luke Barrett earlier on today. 9:37, I think he said that Tyrone have scored in their 2 games against Down and Fermanagh, so they can score. But the question is now, will that have done them any good, winning those 2 matches that easily, whereas Donegal are coming off 2 very tough games in quarter-final and semi-final?
Yeah, the spirit of this group is brilliant. I love the spirit of this group. You could see it even, Charlie, that night in Clones, where you thought they were losing their way after Ethan Field was sent off in the first half. But they come out from the second water break, and just the roar of them coming out together, and you can see the battle for each other. Like, I think that's great credit to Luke and the rest of the management team, because this team was basically thrown together because they wouldn't have had a proper Buncrana Cup as usual. Then they'd only, I think 3 of them were on the panel last year. So they've come through. I think the Antrim game, I spoke to Michael Callahan after, and he says that game they weren't very good. They weren't great, in the first 15-20 minutes that day. They were quite nervous, and then they hit the groove. They scored 4-22 and they won with ease. But that kind of shed the nerves out of them. And they said themselves, they noticed then when they played Monaghan in the quarter-final, that was Monaghan's first outing, that Monaghan had those early nerves. So the 3 victories really couldn't have been much different, really, the way they are. Where Tyrone have totally and utterly coasted into the final. Like I think last week, the scoreline, when you look at it, 165, if somebody saw that on Twitter or whatever, they probably thought it was, what the hell's that, sort of thing. But I thought it was a really absorbing contest. It was a fascinating game, I thought, Alan, I agree with you. It was tough going, and it was something, Armagh were a hugely physical team. They were big. The sending off probably hurt Armagh, as was the decision to go off Oisin O'Neill, who was probably their most effective forward. But Donegal stayed in there and they fought on. Got back to level, got ahead, then even 5-5 a few minutes to go. And before Luke McGlynn kicked 1-1 at the end. So I actually thought I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was quite I think it's just the nature of the championship, you see, but you have no back door, you have no second chance, and basically those guys know if they lose that game, some of them might never see each other in a collective environment again. So you think they have a chance against Tyrone? Yeah, I think they have a chance. I still think we have to see the best of them over the course of a full game, and that includes the Antrim game. As I said, they were quite sloppy in the first few minutes. Aaron Cullen in goal had to make a save. I think it was at maybe 7-3 or something. Fantastic save. But he's done that in each of the 3 games. He's been important first half saves in all the games. So, Luke just said, all he can ask of that squad really is to give it their all. Put in a performance they can be proud of. And if they leave there beaten, he says he can live with that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's kind of the way they're going. So they've a good group ethic there together. So I think they do have a chance. Yeah. As I said, sometimes how much they look into Tyrone, they're obviously very good. They put up massive scores, and as Frank says, they're probably a bit down the road with the S&C thing. But I suppose it's like Donegal seniors last year when they beat Armagh. Do you remember the big win in Cavan? What did that bring them against Cavan, sort of thing? So interesting. Yeah. So I think Donegal will. Yeah, they'll be quietly confident, but they know this is a serious step up now as well. Absolutely. All right, Alan. That game, the Ulster Council are meeting this afternoon actually to fix that game. We thought originally it would be in Enniskillen, but that's to be confirmed. Could still be in Enniskillen, but we'll see about that. We'd hope to have time to talk about the ladies, but we'll have time next week because their final is not until next Saturday week. That's the Ulster final for the Donegal ladies, of course. It's been a mixed season for them so far in Ulster and in the All-Ireland series. We can talk about that next week. But they play Armagh on Saturday the 21st of August, Alan, is that right? And that game's in Healy Park with a 2 o'clock start. We'll get more in about that next weekend. Thanks to Alan, to Frank and to Neil for coming in today. Hopefully they'll all be able to come back next week and review the final and see who was right and who was wrong. I've taken mental notes here of some of the things that have been said, and you can be assured they will be raised next week again. Thanks to Kelly Centre for their support. Their diner is now open for all your favourites, and just to remind you about that €5 special early bird breakfast is available. Thanks to Tommy here at Full Tilt for looking after us again. I always have sympathy for Tommy because you people watching and listening to this have the opportunity to switch it off at any time. He's got to listen to everything that goes on every day. So thanks to Tommy at Full Tilt. We'll be back
back next week to see who are the new Dr. Maguire winners and who will be representing. Are we moving on to Ulster? Is there an Ulster Championship?
Not for this
Not
year,
this year.
2021.
21, okay. All right then. Rejoin us next week. Thanks for tuning in today.
The Donegal Sport Hub Donegal Daily Championship Podcast. Brought to you in association with Kelly Centra, multi-award winning store, Mountaintop Letterkenny, providing 24-hour service 7 days a week.